You say what's up, what's happening, my headspacers? Yeah, it has a ring to it, headspaces. It's VJ, yet again, with another album review. I know we're in the setting of the conversations, but you know it's time for a flip up. It's 2022. We don't know what's happening next. Just keep it glued, keep it subscribed. Now, Dizoteta about one of my favorite albums from last year, the coming together of an OG and a young trailblazer. We got the Super Mega AKA, who teamed up with, I will not say an unlikely partner in the form of Costa Titch, the white boy who's been kind of sizzling South Africa's palette and giving us a sense of what's possible when young white South Africans grow up and are interested in a milieu of coming together and just embracing the identity that they're around, the identities that they're around. Now, a lot has been said about Costa Titch. Some call him a culture vulture. Some say he's a great representative of what can truly happen if we have a kind of a Rainbow Nation-esque approach to going into each other's cultures. I say culture is not strict to its walls. Explore wherever you want to explore. Define yourself in every niche and avenue you want to go. But in everything you do, acknowledge the predecessors. Acknowledge those who came. Acknowledge those who you got it from and flip it in your own way. And let us see that the appropriation, so to speak, is in respect and in inspiration. And I think I get that. I get that a lot from Costa. And definitely we've gotten that a lot from AKA. As much as he is colored, we know how that racial dynamic is a bit tricky in South Africa because it synonymously is black politically, but it's ethnically its own construct. And without going into that, they have given us a pretty short project. I mean, it's like 8 tracks, and I think now that we're back in the long album era, thank you Kanye West for that, it's really refreshing for artists to give us a distilled moment of inspiration. I really enjoyed the length because I feel like it made it very explosive and it left me kind of reeling in and wanting more after that. So it's called You're Welcome. Now the title itself feels presumptuously satisfied with itself, and I think it has every right to. The thing about AKA, first and foremost, is that he's somebody who understands South Africa's cultural mix. He knows how to immerse himself in the language, in the history, in the style, and take extracts of what most South Africans really admire about just this country and the experience and put it in song form. And he's done that mainly through 2 forms. Nostalgia, and I mean nostalgia by borrowing sometimes legitimately and obviously from old Kwaito melodies and sometimes lifting hooks and, you know, references. It was a whole wave back when, you know, with the Skanda Republic, which ignited something in a lot of SA rappers that I think made them go back to a retrospect about parts of our South African musical culture that we might have undermined because of, you know, looking too American in our lens. And sometimes hip-hop can tend to do that to you because it is focally inspired by that space. However, AKA has managed to be one of the artists who I respect in the sense of always making it South African. He deliberately never filters outside of the South African conceptual framework. His references, the things that he says. And You're Welcome is no different. I mean, the hit single, Super Soft, is basically Mshoza's Cortez, an ode to Mshoza's Cortez. The same sampled melody with AKA kind of overlaying it with a catchy hook, which again references Booger Two Shoes' Love Me or Leave Me Alone. So there again, you have evidence of what Super Mega has really characterized his career around, which is number 1, the nostalgia, and number 2, kind of reinventing the South African pop imagination and trying to reconfigure it into the contemporary times. And at best, it always sounds like a beautiful dream that reminds us of the best of our past and the possibilities of the future. And at worst, it can be a little bit annoying. It can feel like an old gimmick. And I feel like with You're Welcome, there are moments where the trope gets a little bit tired. I think after this project, I personally feel like that's the end of it. Any South African rapper who tries to pay homage to our history, our artists, particularly the Kwaito flow or the house flow or the pop culture flow that really came into a rise from the late 90s to the 2000s, they would be doing themselves a favor if in their inspiration they did their best to not literally sample, but to kind of understand the core elements of what made that era so powerful. I think you can be inspired by something without literally taking traces that will visibly remind people of that. I think real great genius artists start off by being visibly and audibly inspired by something, but then at some point it has to evolve to a newness. And I think with You're Welcome, there is a little bit too much of a cycling into things that we've heard before, things that have been done before. And I guess it's great because he being Super Mega, is taking that approach and imbibing a new voice into it, and a new voice that has pretty much a lot of the insights of what South Africa's youth have today, who is, I don't want to say negated from that past, but is forging his own identity. Costa adds that element of contemporariness in this. He adds that element of trap appeal. He adds that element of that piano-esque my 2000 culture. And I understand why AKA wanted to team up with him. I feel like in this album you have a mutual respect from somebody who's beginning to turn heads in this new generation and somebody who's already garnered respect as a legend. And they feed from each other. And in some tracks this chemistry is completely sublime. You know, you got tracks like Static and Munati C, which really display how it can be done effectively. But then certain tracks kind of feel like AKA is an old vampire leeching into Costa Titch's approach. And then there are tracks that feel like Costa Titch is an awkward young guy trying to take a leaf from the old legend. There are moments where the chemistry turns into a kind of awkward admiration and mimicking of each other's styles in order to try to kind of get to a natural meeting point. But I guess it feels, you don't get annoyed with it. It really just feels like two guys jamming in the studio over some like drugs and great music. And because of that, it's such a party ambiance. It's definitely one of those tapes that do not go beyond the party scene. This is you putting it in your car, bumping it, or you just jamming. But this maybe one thing about this tape that I'll say limits it, or maybe doesn't. Maybe that's just what Costa Titch and the Mega wanted to do, is to just make pure club bangers. And this is definitely one of those. You can't play it anywhere where the atmosphere is not about dancing and having a good time and feel like it fits there. If you try and play it for introspection, for reflection, even for observation, it just feels a little bit awkward. So I will ultimately say that as an album catering to the good time, as an album catering to helping people build their ecstasy, as an album that reminds us of how far we've gone in South Africa in our electronic dance culture, in our hip-hop culture, as an album that represents again a past generation, a millennial generation, and this kind of new coming of age generation of now. It really is, for me, a great foray into what the future might possibly be. I liked it. I'm gonna give it a solid 6.5 out of 10. I give it 6.5 because again, old tropes, sometimes tiring, but it made it this far because I mean, god damn it, it does have bangers. And the thing about bangers is when you're right there in the mix, it's the best thing ever. But after a couple of years or so, you forget about it. And I feel like we're gonna forget about this project really soon. It was great while it lasted, It is snackable content made for a specific time, for a specific era, which is pretty short, for specific moments. And I think ultimately when you're making music, the more limitation you put onto it, the lesser the quality and the ultimate merit of the project. So based on that, it's a 6.5 because it's a transient, a deliberately transient project, a deliberately temporary moment. It's airy, it's a dream, and it's a good dream. But you will wake up and you will ask yourself, what was that again? But thank you AKA, thank you Costa Titch for giving us authenticity. I keep saying that A word. You know how much I love that. If you're going to be inspired by the world, channel it into who you are. Understand your own locality, understand your indigenous power. Shout out to the Super Mega for always teaching that lesson to the young guns like Costa Titch. And Costa Titch, we're watching you. You welcome? I don't know yet. I gotta watch a little bit to see if I can actually thank you, Costa, but I'm gonna definitely thank the Super Mega for keeping the music rotating. It's VJ, it's the Headspace. Thank you again.